The ballroom glimmered under golden chandeliers as elite guests whispered over champagne and stock rumors. At the center of it all stood Elena Brooks, the poised black CEO whose billion-dollar tech company had just signed the deal of the decade. Cameras flashed until a sharp gasp sliced through the music. A crystal wine glass tilted, and deep red liquid cascaded over Elena's white silk dress. Standing before her, smirking without apology, was Victoria Langford, the billionaire's sister and heiress of the very family funding the deal. For a moment, no one moved. Then the whispers began, phones rose, and as Elena calmly set down her glass, the air shifted, because within the next 24 hours, Victoria's family empire would lose everything. As the crowd's murmurs rippled through the ballroom, Elena didn't flinch. Her eyes met Victoria's for only a second, calm, unreadable, powerful. The wine dripped from her dress like melted rubies, yet she simply excused herself and walked away, heels clicking against marble in a rhythm colder than silence. Behind her, the Langford family stood frozen, uncertain whether to comfort their daughter or control the damage already unraveling before their guests. In the dressing suite upstairs, Elena looked at her reflection, not with humiliation, but clarity. For years, she'd fought to be in rooms like this, where power dressed itself in politeness and prejudice hid behind smiles. But tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't the outsider being tolerated. She was the partner being tested. Downstairs, the event carried on, laughter forced, music hollow. The Langfords didn't realize that while their reputation dripped onto the marble floor, Elena's team had already begun moving quietly. By morning, legal lines, contracts, and silent partnerships would turn the tables entirely, because Elena Brooks wasn't just a CEO. She was the architect of a revolution wrapped in elegance, and Victoria's cruelty had just lit the fuse. By morning, the storm had already begun, quiet, invisible, and devastating. News headlines hadn't caught it yet, but in sleek glass towers and boardrooms from New York to Dubai, whispers spread like wildfire. The Langfords' $2.4 billion acquisition deal, the one meant to cement their dynasty, was now under review. Somewhere, someone had pulled a thread that held the entire empire together, and that someone was Elena. While the Langfords slept off champagne and arrogance, her legal team was awake, moving like chess masters through midnight calls. The footage from last night, Victoria's drunken insult, the spilled wine, the gasps, had been caught not by gossip blogs, but by international investors watching the gala live stream. Within hours, partners began asking quiet questions. Is this the kind of leadership we're aligning with? In a world obsessed with image, reputation was currency. And the Langfords had just declared bankruptcy in public decency. Elena didn't need revenge. She needed results. By 9 a.m., she was sitting in a minimalist office overlooking the city skyline, a fresh white suit replacing the stained one. Her assistant placed a folder before her, investor statements, withdrawal letters, and one confidential email from the board of the Langford Corporation. The subject line read, "Request for immediate meeting." She smiled faintly. The empire that once saw her as a diversity checkbox now needed her hand to stay afloat. But Elena wasn't sure if she'd extend it. Not yet. Because sometimes justice doesn't scream. It signs contracts, and the Langfords were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Langford boardroom was a cathedral of power. Glass walls, steel accents, and fear disguised as confidence. Victoria sat at one end, pale beneath flawless makeup, while her brother, Richard Langford, the family's CEO, adjusted his tie with trembling fingers. Every seat was filled, but the air was heavy with silence. Then, the doors opened. Elena entered, composed as ever, her presence commanding the room without a word. She didn't bring lawyers or assistants, just a single folder in her hand, and the quiet assurance of someone who already knew the outcome. Richard began with corporate courtesy, pretending last night hadn't happened. But his voice cracked. As he reached the point of desperation, the investors were pulling out, the markets were reacting, and their family's reputation was in free fall. Elena listened, unmoved. When he finally asked if her company would consider restructuring the partnership, she opened the folder. Inside were the updated contracts, already revised, already signed, transferring the deal's control to her firm entirely. She looked up, her tone calm yet unyielding. "This isn't about partnerships anymore," she said softly. "It's about accountability." Across the table, Victoria's breath hitched. The weight of her arrogance was now a public liability. Cameras outside the boardroom flashed through tinted glass, and somewhere in the distance the hum of the market bell echoed, signaling the fall of an empire. Elena stood, collected her folder, and walked out, leaving the Langfords drowning in the silence they once weaponized. As Elena stepped into the hallway, the sound of her heels echoed like punctuation to a story finally ending. Behind her, the Langfords' legacy unraveled in real time. News alerts lighting up phones, investors withdrawing statements, and the company's stock plummeting faster than anyone could control. But Elena didn't look back. She had no reason. 2. Vindication didn't come from their downfall. It came from the dignity she never let them take. Outside, cameras swarmed, reporters shouted, yet she walked through the chaos with a stillness that silenced even the noise. Her calm became the headline. By evening, every major outlet carried the same image: Elena Brooks, radiant in white, standing on the courthouse steps, a symbol of grace, power, and consequence. The caption beneath it read, "When respect is denied, the world listens in other ways." Victoria's family, once untouchable, became a cautionary tale of arrogance meeting accountability. Contracts faded, fortunes shifted, but Elena's quiet resilience became legend. Whispered in boardrooms, studied in business schools, and remembered by those who'd ever been underestimated. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it simply walks out the door, wearing white.